How will you manage the year-to-year special education cost swings while sustaining your goals for inclusion and while staying within the Board of Finance guidance?
Thank you for the question.
Yep.
Testing,
Just
testing.
get close to the microphone, yes.
Thanks for being here. Thanks to the library for having us. Thanks for Heather and Good Morning Wilton and the Leading Women Voters. Special education. It's a big deal in our town. It's a big deal in the state. And our superintendent has done some wonderful, forward-thinking strategies to try and manage our cost swings as much as is possible. We've had two, since he became the, I'm so sorry, it's very nerve-wracking to be the first one.
We could come back to you if you prefer.
We have the Genesis program, which is an alternative high school, and we have Community Steps, which is our 18 to 22. Both things are visionary from the superintendent, which the Board of Education has been very happy to support, and both of those things have enabled us to contain the special education costs somewhat. Genesis allows kids who may find it difficult in a bigger high school setting to have a better experience in a high school environment. It runs 7 through 12. It's really helping to keep kids in school and not have them outplaced. Outplacement costs are some of the biggest cost drivers of special education. Just this year we have 2 new special education students who are costing $250,000 each to outplace. So if we can minimize the number of students that need to be outplaced, it soon adds up that we're saving a lot of money in the budget, because we don't get everything back from the federal government. We get about $1 million back in IDEA grants from the federal government, so a lot of it is falling on the taxpayers of Wilton. So when we can not outplace people, we're saving a lot of money and containing costs as well as we can.
Mr. Shander?
Yeah, sure. So I think that...
And again, you've got to be close to that microphone.
Sorry. So when it comes to special education, I think the first thing that really comes to mind is, we have to provide mandated services for students who need them.
Microphone, closer to the
I'm
microphone.
going to be a pop star. Okay, I'm going to lean into this because it's low, so I hope you grant me some dispensation for my posture. But look, we have legally mandated requirements to provide services for students who are qualified or who need them, right? So if a student has an IEP or a 504 plan, the town simply has to do that. This is not an option we have. So I think this really becomes a question about how best to manage the cost of providing those services. I think Ms. Davies raised a couple of things that the town has already done that we should continue to look for creative solutions that minimize our costs to still meet the bar of what we have to deliver for those students. And also, as she mentioned, this cost, unfortunately, is very lumpy and in some ways unpredictable. We don't, during my Good Morning Wilton interview, if you get a chance to see it, there was a question where I was asked, how is town government different from running a corporation? And the simple fact is, when you run a company, you get to pick who you work with. When you run a town, you don't get to pick who you live with. And we're all in this together, and we have to provide services, but we don't get to pick who gets to live in Wilton. And so when somebody comes here and they need those services, we have to find a way to provide them, and we have to advocate for that. And at the same time, we have to recognize that the town has a certain amount of resources we have to live within. And so that will mean choices to be made and creative solutions to be found.
Ms. Eli?
So one of the things that we end up having to balance is our obligation to the
I'm
kids.
sorry, but you do have to get a little closer to that.
So one of the things that we always have to balance on the Board of Ed is our obligation to the kids, and obviously wanting to help them the best we can, and finding the money or the resources to do it. And so that yin and yang is always something that I think Kevin works very hard to balance. Yes, we have a Genesis program that has helped us not outplace a lot of kids that probably would have been outplaced had they not been in the Genesis program. And I think what we're trying to do now is look for other ways to keep our kids in-house, within the district, and not have to outplace as many as we ended up having to do, especially during COVID. I think there was a point where we had 30 outplaced kids because they couldn't manage being in a mainstream high school. So that number has gone way down. We probably have about 14 now, but we're obligated and we must do right by them. And so if they do need to be outplaced, that is something that we have to seriously consider, whether the cost is something that we have to absorb somehow or other. But the bottom line is we're about the kids and about what their needs are. And that's something that we have to keep thinking about and maintaining. But I think we're trying now to think of other ways to keep kids in the district and keep the cost down as long as it's effective, as long as it's helpful to their growth.